Big game this week, San Francisco 49ers and the Miami Dolphins. But what about the origins of Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan? How important will this game be to the coaching staffs, the players that are so familiar with each other? We've got some notes on usage. Since Christian McCaffrey came to town, how down has Deebo Samuel's usage been? Tom Brady potentially going back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or back to the New England Patriots. Could that mean Mac Jones could be on the move from the Patriots? Could we see an interesting quarterback competition potentially in the future with the San Francisco 49ers? But mostly we're talking week 13, Niners, Dolphins, big game, maybe game of the year coming up right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On 49ers, Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season. More props, more odds, more lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And by the way, thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Croc, taking a look at this game, I have said this week that it's not the most important game because of what is on the schedule, what it means for seeding and stuff. Clearly, it's a good measuring stick game. It's a barometer game. Where do the 49ers fit in? How good is that Dolphins offense? How good is that 49ers defense? Those types of things. But when you break it down to the individuals involved that will be on the field, that will be on the sideline, Croc, this game might matter quite a bit to some of those guys, right? Is this their Super Bowl in a way where you have the teacher that wants to become, or the student that wants to become the master in Mike McDaniel? Some of these players that have chirped a little bit back and forth throughout the week, wanting to show the guys that are in the other town who's got it better right now. I think it might matter a lot more to the players on the field, the coaches that are involved, than it does to the standings in 2022.
Yeah, definitely the coaches. That's the most interesting dynamic because those guys are probably close like brothers, right? It's someone you've been coaching with, up until this year since 2006. You got to be close. You got to be tight. They've been together every step of the way. And I think the chess match between those two guys, knowing each other so well, and I kind of compare it to, my marriage, right? Like me and my wife, we've been together almost 10 years now. And we know how each other thinks. We know each other's strengths, weaknesses, what annoys each other. I can finish her sentences a lot of times. When you're just so close to someone and you talk to them about everything, you just know everything about them and how they work, how they tick. And these two guys here have been around each other more than they've been around their own families, right? We're talking about long work days, going in at 7 a.m., maybe not even leaving, or, staying the night at the facility because they're working on different things. And they've done that for 16 years, since 2006. So That is a long time. They know each other inside and out. I think the chess match between those guys and probably that competitive nature between the two, because I'm sure that's there as well. That's probably the biggest thing I'm watching for in this game.
Dude, if you take sleeping out of the equation, there's a chance that Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel spent more time with each other than anybody in the world, than their own family.
Well, yeah.
Right?
No,
because
I 100%. 100%. I mean, just for 6 months out the year, 7 months out the year, they are with each other more than their families, like just way more hours. And even then, coming the off season, a lot of times coaches are taken away from their family by just watching film, prepping for the draft, whatever it is. Those guys know each other better than anyone in the world. I mean, it's truly intriguing when you think about it from that standpoint.
I hope they're mic'd up. And Mike McDaniel is just really good when he's mic'd up anyway. I've seen a lot of that this year. But just with that relationship, and I want to see that moment when one of the coaches calls something maybe, or there's something that happens in the game where one of the coaches looks across the field at the other dude like, what was that? Like that sort of like, oh, dude, okay, I see. Something that only they know. And like, yeah, you're right, finishing each other's sentences, knowing what pisses the other person off. Like that's a big one, right? Knowing how to get under their skin if you want to. So, and it's been, you mentioned it off the air. It's crazy how long these two guys have been together. And it was actually Mike Shanahan who gave Mike McDaniel his shot back as an intern. Like Mike McDaniel was like hanging out at the facility trying to get into football, right? And what was it? Did he start out as a ball boy, or what was his first job with the Broncos, right, back in 2005 with Mike Shanahan?
Let's see. I didn't read it
That
at first.
Kyle would have been in Houston with the Texans at that time.
So I believe Kyle was maybe with Houston, but they were in Houston together in 2006. All right, but let's see. McDaniel was hired in 2005 at the age of 22 in his hometown Denver Broncos. So he was, a local resident there as a coaching intern under Mike Shanahan. The Broncos in 2005 finished with what was their best record since John Elway. But it doesn't say exactly what he did until he got to Houston in 2006, where he was hired as an offensive assistant under Coach Gary Kubiak. And that, of course, was with Kyle Shanahan, who would be, I think, a receiver coach at that time. He did leave at one point. So there is a brief little break there. 2009, he coached California Redwoods and Sacramento Mountain Lions. So he was over in the UFL in 2009.
Yeah, so there's that. That was when he had a little bit of an alcohol problem, and he's talked about that, right? There was a story about how I think the lifestyle of it. We talked about the hours they're putting in. I think there's a certain lifestyle. We've seen coaches that like have some problems like this, have issues like this, and some off the field stuff, and just the pressure that's on you and the hours you're putting in, and it's bros all the time, right? And he developed a problem, and he got it fixed, and he came back in the league, and he's made really good on that since then. And the Shanahans gave him a shot again. He came back and they coached with the Washington together, and he's on that staff with everybody, right? Was he in? Yeah, he had to be on Washington, right, with McVay and LaFleur and all those guys. I mean, that's insane that they've been together this long.
He was in Washington 2011, and I mean he's coached with Kyle ever since. Even in Cleveland, McDaniel was hired to be the receiver coach there. So, and obviously Kyle was the offensive coordinator. Kyle was only there for a year. He left to Atlanta, as did McDaniel, who was hired as an offensive assistant in Atlanta. So, I mean, they've been.
Who do you think has an advantage? If you're just talking, just from the coaches knowing each other, to me, it feels like McDaniel would have the advantage of knowing more about how Kyle runs his team and all the personnel than Kyle would have knowing what Mike McDaniel is going to do just based off of a half a season's worth of film. But I'm sure he knows some things that maybe, and I'm sure I'm sure there was butting heads behind the scenes at times. I'm sure there was things where like, man, I would like to do this, and Kyle knows it, but no, Kyle wants to do things this way. And I would think though that it would be easier for McDaniels to know more about the way Kyle Shanahan's running things than Kyle Shanahan about what Mike McDaniels is going to do. But then there's the aspect of Kyle Shanahan, when you are the guy in charge, and the Shanahans have taught, I'm sure, Mike McDaniel so much, like I've taught you everything but I haven't taught you everything I know. So I wonder how much extra like Kyle's got for Mike that might surprise him too. So I can't wait for that stuff.
I don't know how much you can hide from someone when you're with someone for that many years. Like, it's going to be hard. It's just because natural conversations, right? Like, that's like you saying, you know what, Croc, I don't teach you everything that I know when it comes to podcasting, things like that. When I have questions or whatever, you answer it. We talk about it. It would be hard.
I got a whole list of things that I can't let you know.
But it would be hard, right? And I look at it like me and my brother. When you are close like that, you just have conversations. So it's not even about keeping something from someone. You talk to them about your thoughts and different things. And the way guys get better, it bouncing things off of each other. And, what do you think this? Okay, do you think this might work? And those conversations 100% have happened. And we've heard about the input that McDaniel has had for Kyle Shanahan. As far as who might have the advantage, I would say by default, McDaniel, just because this is the first time that he's actually run the show. So when you run the show, there just might be there's this level of unknown with how you're going to do certain things. Even if I have an idea of things that you like to do or whatever, but not just that, you got these different type of guys that we just don't have. Now, again, there still could be the conversation of, well, years ago, they could be like, man, if I had Tyreek Hill and I had a guy like Jalen Waddle, I would do X, Y, Z. And he'd be like, yeah, man, I wish I could do that. But, Deebo's not that type of receiver. And, so now he has them, and he could be going back to those conversations, Kyle, and be like, well, I remember when we had those conversations about liking this type of receiver, or maybe like a Henry Ruggs, right? Let's say Henry Ruggs. Let's say they liked Henry Ruggs in the draft process. They were evaluating him, and they knew all, his pros and cons, and they had their thoughts on, hey, this is how we would use him. And they know, and they had those conversations. Kyle's probably going back to that and thinking like, okay, I know these are
Mike McDaniel.
I've seen him do this.
I like,
and these are,
Lamb
so
and Ayuk,
there's still going to be a certain level of unknown, so I think you just by default have to give the edge to McDaniel, but they know each other so well. That more than anything else is a storyline that I'll be watching for in this game.
More Locked On 49ers coming up. I want to talk about the usage of Deebo Samuel because we've got some data here that backs up kind of what we've seen on the field and what we've seen from the usage of Deebo since Christian McCaffrey showed up. We don't have enough information on the injury report quite yet as we record here. Don't have practice information for Thursday and Friday yet. So I don't want to talk a lot about injuries today, but there is a lot of monitoring going on with guys, and hopefully Christian McCaffrey's at full speed, and hopefully the 49ers can get Eric Armstead back. And then another little story that I think is just fun to talk about here when it comes to the 49ers and what we went through in the 2021 draft. Could we see a quarterback competition at some point with Mac Jones and Trey Lance next? Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. It is the easiest thing you can do, and it is one of the funnest things you can do all throughout the week, every single day. It's daily fantasy. And how easy is it? Well, entries can be made in less than 60 seconds. You only pick 2 to 5 players. You're not building an entire team. You're not playing against a bunch of people. You are just playing against those projections available at Prize Picks. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on that entry. That's how easy it is. You're not competing against sharks and fantasy folks in this big pool of people. Only projections on the NFL, NBA, baseball when it comes back, NHL, PGA golf. We're talking about college football, basketball, NASCAR, tennis, boxing, MMA, cricket, you name it, esports. You can find projections every single day at prizepicks.com. And Prize Picks currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. And when you download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports, first-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100 more to play with. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Got some data here from Dwayne McFarland, Croc. He is an analyst at Pro Football Focus now. We've talked to him before on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. He's a really smart guy, and he's all about the usage. He's all about he's a fantasy guy first, but it's really important data, I think, beyond fantasy as well. And we called him master of the usage verse because he's all about the usage when you're figuring out who's going to be valuable in upcoming games, in upcoming seasons, because of how much they're used and their opportunity for scoring fantasy points. And right now, Deebo's usage is down. And we've seen that on the field. And we kind of felt that when Christian McCaffrey came aboard. This is what Dwayne had to say about the exact numbers here with the usage. The addition of Christian McCaffrey has been traumatizing to Deebo Samuel's opportunities. And again, this is about fantasy football. It hasn't been traumatizing to the 49ers. They're doing well. They're winning games. And Deebo still made some big plays. Deebo Samuel's target share before Christian McCaffrey. So his target share in the 49ers offense, he was getting 23% of the target share, 24%. This is each game. 23%, 24%, 29%, 29%, 30%, 25%. So somewhere 25% or so just about every single game, more or less, even up to 30% of the target share in the 49ers offense. Then, once the 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel's target share went down to 14%, then 17% the next week. Then Mexico City, 32%. So that was the only one that's been back on par or even higher than where he was before. Then last week, again, 14%. So almost cut his usage in half in all but 1 week since Christian McCaffrey has joined the San Francisco 49ers. And he goes on to say this is not a Brandon Ayuk taking away from Deebo Samuel thing. It's mostly about Christian McCaffrey, who is, battling in that same depth of target area that Deebo Samuel operates in the short passing game. And so Deebo's usage is actually, or Ayuk's usage has actually stayed the same. So it's clearly Christian McCaffrey taken away from Deebo Samuel's usage. Wow. My first question, Croc, to you about this is it's not super surprising because we saw it and they do operate similarly and they can both carry the ball, they can both run the ball. Does it take away from the value of adding Christian McCaffrey if you're taking away usage from Deebo Samuel at the same time?
I think it takes away from the fact that next year you'll be paying those guys like $30 million between the two guys for the same person, essentially. Right? So it's like, well, if we have one guy, it takes away from this guy. But if we have this guy, it takes away from that guy. But ultimately, like, you're paying these guys $30 million to kind of offset each other.
And again, this isn't rushing utilization because Deebo's, had some carries too. So his, he's been a bigger part of the offense, but he was, and I don't have the exact rushing because it's only receiving utilization numbers here, but I don't think he's carried the ball more since Christian McCaffrey either. So that's probably about the same or maybe even less too. By the way, so on the same token, since Christian McCaffrey has joined the 49ers and Deebo did miss one of those games, the pre-bye week 8 game, Deebo didn't play at all. So Christian McCaffrey has one more game than Deebo in that span. Here's the target receiving share for Christian McCaffrey during those games. Week 7, first game, he was only 18%. Week 8, without Deebo, Christian McCaffrey, 45%.
And that was the Rams game.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong category. That's routes run. So targets. Sorry. It was only 5% in the first week when the first game that, Christian McCaffrey's only here for a couple of days and he jumped in. He got 5% of the target share in that week 7 game. Week 8 with Deebo out, it was 36% of the target share. Then the last 3 weeks, it's been 21%, 25%, 17%. So higher target share than Deebo Samuel.
And that's in the passing game, right? That's not
in the passing game only, not counting rushing. Yeah, not counting carries. So very interesting. And
so does that go to when people say, oh, there's not enough balls to go around for everyone? But I use there hasn't been a change in my usage, even though his volume wasn't great. But, Ayuk has had several games where he's playing well. And he's like, well, there's no change in anything I'm doing. There's only a change in Deebo, what you're doing. And Deebo's probably looking like, y'all just paid me $20 million a year.
Yeah, actually. So here's the Ayuk target share in the week. Ayuk's target shares kind of went up and down anyway, but here's Brandon Ayuk's target share for the whole season starting week 1. Week 1, 12%. Week 2, 33%. Week 3, 29%. Then down again for a couple of weeks, 17%, 15% in weeks 4 and 5. Then week 6, 28% target share. Week 7, which is when we started looking at Christian McCaffrey on the team. Week 7, 23%. Week 8, 24%. Week 10, 29%. Down in week 11, 14%. He only had the 2 catches, but they were both touchdowns in Mexico City. Then in week 12, back up to 23%. So pretty much, similar consistency pre and post Christian McCaffrey.
Now, what impact do you think some of this has on just one guy taking away? We know they're taking away targets, right? But is it because, this guy's on the field, so he's opening it up for this guy? Like, we got a factor for Deebo, so we're going to key on Deebo, and we're just going to let Christian McCaffrey catch all these passes. Like, do you think that's what's going on? Or
I just think that they have to throw more. And we saw that we've seen it the last couple of weeks. The Niners threw a lot in the first half, even though they didn't put up a ton of points on the board against the Saints. And they threw a lot for points with in the Mexico City game. And the Mexico City game, that was Deebo's biggest usage in the target share, and that was one of the 49ers' best games on offense. So to me, I think if you really want to make use of all these players and have the best offense, you've got to throw the ball a lot. And we have seen the 49ers throw more, and maybe that's what they're learning is like, look, having Christian McCaffrey in and then taken away from using Deebo, that doesn't help us as much. We actually have to throw more. And so I think that's what we're seeing. And now that Elijah Mitchell's out, I wonder if the 49ers are going to throw a lot again this week against the Dolphins. And the Dolphins, coincidentally, have thrown a lot more Mike McDaniel has than Kyle Shanahan had in the past.
I hope that the listeners find this as intriguing as I do, because this is fascinating to me.
Yeah. Oh, no.
So just to hear from that different perspective. And then, like you said, with Mike McDaniel and the rate that the Miami Dolphins are throwing the ball, which I think prior to this season, we would say that Tua was left-handed Jimmy Garoppolo, like, right? That was what people were saying. But you give him these different type of weapons that he's just looking to get the ball in their hands, and now all of a sudden it's like, well, is he an MVP candidate, right? You know, people are looking at him kind of in that light and throwing the ball more. And I'm curious to know if there's been any drop-off in attempts since Jeff Wilson has started playing there, because I mean they've been definitely hammering the ball more, and when looking at least box score, doing a little box score scouting, he's getting his touches, and Mostert's been getting touches as well. They're utilizing multiple backs.
It does. I haven't been diving deep into those numbers, but I'm pretty sure they have actually done the opposite and started running the ball more often. I don't know if it's by a lot, but they definitely, it feels like they have versus early in the season when they were throwing the ball a lot more. Interesting stuff there. And it's not that it's wrong or bad, or it's just, it's
because you're winning.
You don't want to not get the ball in Deebo's hands. Like that's, you should never want that. So how do you continue to get the ball in Deebo's hands and also still utilize this new weapon that you have in Christian McCaffrey? Brandon Ayuk, I think we saw him start to drop in targets, but then his targets have been like kind of more open, you know, he's going to get one-on-ones. And so those are the big hitters, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to go haymaker Ayuk, but you're not going to get as often the ball, but these are touchdown passes we're throwing to Ayuk. You know what I mean?
Do you think that team's double Deebo Samuel? Like when he's out for route, like I know there's attention when you see him kind of swing out in the backfield or whatever, but he just lined up at receiver. Are they doubling him?
No, what I see, and I haven't gone back and watched enough of the coaches tape the last couple of weeks because I haven't had time, but this is what I see when I'm watching the 49ers play, is that whoever's in the backfield gets the most attention. And I think that opens things up for those receivers to almost always be singled up. And we've seen plays where Christian McCaffrey's in the backfield, the defense flows this way, and it actually opens it up for Deebo to make it catch a slant, or, you know, for Kittle or Brandon Ayuk. Like Brandon Ayuk is a really good player, but if you're an opposing defensive coordinator, you're not going to be doubling Brandon Ayuk with all those other guys, right? And you're not definitely going to want to stay close to the line of scrimmage, try to stop the run, force Jimmy Garoppolo to go outside the numbers down the field on you. So, and I think that's what we saw last week with the Saints, is they're like, well, we're going to try to stop the run. We're going to follow whoever's in the backfield. When Deebo's in the backfield, I think that opens things up for other players too. And that's what we'd seen pre-Christian McCaffrey, is teams would just follow Deebo. Not so much double covering him in the passing game, but like if he's in motion, we're going to slide that way. You know, we're going to pay extra attention there because he's the guy that can hurt us the most. And
they definitely put more attention to the middle of the field. Looking at the all 22 coaches film, you see them actually putting a safety right there in the middle of the field.
Oh yeah, and like
to rob any crosser.
Teams aren't even shy about it anymore. They're like, we're going to try to jump in front of these in-cutting routes. Like we're trying to pick off Jimmy and jump in front of these things. You know, like,
I was curious to see when they were going to just blatantly do it, because that would have been my go-to. I mean, for years now, like you see where they want to win when they have Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. Like, why aren't you just sitting on that and make them beat you a different way, right? Like, like when I was coaching high school football, let's say I coached against, I don't know, Central Catholic, and they run the triple option veer, whatever you call that offense, wishbone stuff or whatever. Mm-hmm. But they have a receiver out there, but it's like, dude, they're running the ball. So I told my corners, say, look, line up inside, eyes inside in the backfield, and as soon as you see that ball hands off, you trigger. Like, don't even worry about getting in our stance, looking at the receiver, reading this. Like, unless they beat us on the throw, like if they beat us on the throw, then we'll adjust. But this is what they do 98% of the time. So let's focus on that and let's make them beat us a different way. That would be my approach to the 49ers offense. Like, make Jimmy beat us over the top. Like,
I
make
think
him
that's
just throw
been
a straight go route.
Yeah, and it's smart. And so the 49ers have to beat that. I think Christian McCaffrey showing up has helped because it's spread things a little bit more laterally. I think not so much down the field. There's more guys to pay attention to. You can't key on one player now. You guys would kind of just key more on an area of the field, I think. But teams are still, judging by what we saw with the Saints, and the Saints did a good job against the 49ers, is you're trying to stop the run before anything else when you play Kyle Shanahan's football teams. And when you pay attention to the run game that much, you have a lot of guys closer to the line of scrimmage, which means you are going to be in that area anyway. So the 49ers do have to find a way to continue. And that's why I love so much seeing that touchdown pass to George Kittle in Mexico City. Budda Baker's trying to jump that dig route, and he breaks it off, and you get a touchdown. You get a big play. The 49ers are going to have to do that. If they really want to gouge teams and hurt teams, they're going to have to be able to do things like that.
Right.
We have to move on. I'm going to move on to another story. We do have a listener that says he knows why the 49ers running backs are getting injured at a higher rate than we should expect. And then this story about Tom Brady back to New England is interesting and how it potentially could impact the 49ers next. This episode brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. Find Think Like a Champion now, wherever you get your podcasts. Think Like a Champion is a brand new podcast from Russell Wilson and Audible. Russ is a champion on the field, not so much this year, but off of it, we rarely know the grind on the path to greatness. It's more than just doing leg exercises on your flight to overseas. Russell Wilson, alongside co-host Harry Wilson and Trevor Moawad, I believe how you pronounce his name, Moawad, digs into how high-performance athletes, artists, and leaders push the boundaries of their potential. Here, two Super Bowl champion and MVP caliber players like Von Miller deliver sharp insights about performing at your highest level in moments of extreme pressure, or NCAA champion Tim Tebow discuss how to find your unique personal mission in the world. How about that? A Tim Tebow, Russell Wilson conversation. How interesting would that one be? Get over to Locked On Presents for a sneak preview of Think Like a Champion, or catch the full series available anywhere you get your podcasts, available everywhere now. Audible, get in the game. How about this story, Croc? We got a story here, Croc, about, am I not showing up on the screen for you on the YouTube section of this thing?
Yeah, I don't see you.
I just disappeared. I don't know why. We don't need to see my face.
We just need to hear you. We're good.
Yeah, exactly. How about this one? This story from The Athletic about Tom Brady and where he could be next year. And I know some 49ers fans have thrown it out there. Oh, maybe Tom Brady's that veteran quarterback that we should pair with Trey Lance after Jimmy Garoppolo moves on in free agency next year. And hey, maybe Jimmy G to the Patriots could be a thing too in all of this. Doubtful. And I think a lot of this is very doubtful. But in an article from The Athletic, Tom Brady, a pending free agent, could return to the Patriots next season. In that scenario, Mac Jones could potentially be traded because the Patriots do have rookie Bailey Zappi that they like that could be that backup player. What do you think? We know Kyle Shanahan loved Mac Jones in the draft process. He liked Trey Lance better. But could we see a Mac Jones versus Trey Lance quarterback competition maybe as early as next year? And those two players would not count a ton versus the cap. So it would not be more expensive as far as dollars. Now you'd have to trade for Mac Jones, but it would not be more, and I don't think that would cost that much. You would not have to spend a lot of money like you would maybe a veteran quarterback if, say, you wanted to bring back Jimmy Garoppolo or whatever. And could the fan base even handle that? Because look, the Mac Jones versus Trey Lance stuff and, the Justin Fields stuff and everything that started happening the month leading up to the draft after the 49ers traded up. That stuff's never going to go away. Those players are always going to be compared. Like me and you on the show are always going to compare those guys, 49ers fans. That will be in their minds ingrained forever. And we may not know for another decade until you can really stamp a win or a loss for anybody in that scenario. But knowing that it came down to those two quarterbacks, that the 49ers were willing to draft Mac Jones number 3, could we see a Mac Jones versus Trey Lance quarterback competition? And could the fan base even handle that at this point?
I'll answer that last question first. No, the 49ers fan base could not handle it, which is actually good for business, right? I mean, we saw uptick in listens during that time. So it was so controversial. Everybody wanted to listen in on just different opinions on that whole thing. As far as, it happening, I feel like the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, as long as you and I have been either talking or, on this podcast together, they have done things that I have felt, and you as well, have been a little bit more unconventional at times. Things that maybe I wouldn't do it a certain way, but they would. And the way that they've done things has led to a certain level of success. So I wouldn't knock or say I know more than them. I will say because of that, and they've done things a different way, I would not trade for Mac Jones, but I clearly can see a scenario where Kyle just says, we're doing it. And if he decides in his head that that's what he wants to do because he liked him so much, and maybe he's seen some of those things this year. Now, I've seen a lot of watching Mac Jones, right? I've watched a lot of Mac Jones. I think he's done enough weird things to tell me that I'm more willing to, see what, Trey Lance truly would be and just give him this next year, right? But Kyle, he just thinks different. Sometimes, again, a little bit more unconventional. So I wouldn't be shocked or surprised at all if they did do it.
And we know that Kyle Shanahan's, just with all the pre-draft stuff from 2021 on, and all the Jimmy G stuff this offseason, Kyle Shanahan's not afraid of what the reports will be, how much the fan base freaks out about stuff, right? If he thinks it's the right move, he'll do it. And from a stories being written about the scenario perspective, it would seem like a disaster. But if Kyle Shanahan thinks, right, like from Kyle Shanahan, like kind of doesn't care about that chaos. And I guess has removed himself enough from the social media stuff that he doesn't really think about it. And I don't know if he's oblivious to it or just doesn't care. But man,
think about this past offseason and bringing back Jimmy Garoppolo and what it did. Now, obviously, clearly the right choice in doing so, but just having Jimmy on the roster, the conversation that surrounded that topic throughout the offseason, the talking heads and what they were saying and how it was a story every single day. Colin Cowherd, his narratives that he's pushed throughout this time. I mean, we've heard all these different things that were surrounding just that decision to say, you know what? We're trying to trade him, but we can keep him. And for him, he did not care at all. But everyone else, I mean, it was almost talked about ad nauseum. And clearly, we host a podcast, so we have to talk about it as well. We have to talk about what other people are talking about and give our opinions on it. But Kyle clearly did not care. So I agree with you on that.
And I wonder, Kyle almost might feel emboldened to make a crazy move like that too, because he's like, well, look what you guys said about this other thing. And that worked out, especially if the 49ers go, win a Super Bowl or something this year. Like, look how that worked out. And you guys thought that was weird. So I'm going to do this other thing you think is weird.
How far can his weirdness go?
There's no limits. I don't think there's any bounds. I don't think so. He does his own thing. Kyle Shanahan's not worried about it, clearly, as we've seen. But no, that scenario it's not going to happen. So I don't want to say it's not going to happen because I think it could happen, but it's very, very unlikely. Mostly because if it was this offseason, the Niners don't have a first-round pick or a second-round pick or a third-round pick. And with all the things they might need, they're going to trade a future high pick. Probably, like it would probably cost at least a next year's second. I'm guessing, and I'm sure the Patriots would be like, "Oh, we want a first-round pick for Mac Jones." I don't know if they would get that, but there's going to be some QB needy teams. There might be some teams that really liked him before the draft. There might be some new coaches, new scenarios where they're like, I'd rather just spend this for Mac Jones than go into the draft and take an unknown quarterback, CJ Stroud or whatever. Or maybe those quarterbacks don't even fall to the teams that want them. So there might be a market for it. a future second at least. The 49ers in a place where they can be spending more draft picks on players that they don't even know if they're going to get that much contribution from them.
The issue with that is because, like you said, you know more about what you're getting from Mac Jones than you would a CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, or any of those other quarterbacks that might be in that class, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's what was the thing coming out of college, where it was like you kind of know what Mac Jones is and what he isn't,
Right?
and I think he's lived up to that, both good and bad, because there still is. And when you watch the games, it's like, man, he can do this well, he does that well, and he'll have a game where it's like, oh, it looks like a lot like Kirk Cousins, and he has a lot of other games where it just looks like you're waiting for that, like that thing that he can do that other people can't, and you never see that. Someone in the chat the other day, someone had asked a question, and they asked about, it was Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, and they were like, what can Jimmy do that Trey Lance can't? And then answer that vice versa. And when you watch Trey Lance play, obviously you could say, well, Jimmy's more consistent at certain things. But then you also could say, but does that mean that Trey Lance can't do it? As opposed to what Trey Lance does that Jimmy doesn't give you. And I think there's a big difference there, right? With some of the throws, like the layer throws, some of the throws we saw week 1 in the rain, like layer throws over 3 defenders into a guy where Jimmy's like, maybe I can make that, but I'm just not even going to attempt that type of throw.
Yeah.
Right. Or some of the things he could do with his legs and run. Again, you want to build more consistency, and I think you could say the same thing kind of about Mac Jones. Whereas, like, if you're looking at it from, the Trey Lance thing, the only thing is you should know more about what you're getting from Mac as opposed to Lance. So I don't know. There's just that certain level of upside that's still there, and still haven't seen Lance enough to just know exactly what he is and what he isn't. It's enough for me to just be like, I would not go the Mac Jones route.
Oh no, I would not at all. We're in agreement there, Croc. Would Kyle is the question.
Kyle would.
Big game this weekend. I'm pumped for it. Croc and I will be back after Dolphins 49ers to break it all down as we always do. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. Make sure you check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, Locked On NFL Draft, Locked On Sports Today, everything the network has to offer. Croc and I will be back post game right here, Locked On 49ers.